The Sony A7 III is Sony's brand new full-frame mirrorless camera that has the YouTube world abuzz. And we finally have one to play with. Let's check it out. What's up everybody, I'm the Everyday Dad. If I can figure it out, you can figure it out. I've been shooting on mirrorless cameras exclusively for almost a year now, and I am fully on board with the product. I love mirrorless cameras. They're small, they're high quality, they're just really great cameras. I've used several Micro Four Thirds cameras, I've used Sony APS-C cameras, I'm currently filming on a Sony A6300. I've used the gamut of them, but I've been considering moving to a bigger camera, to a full frame, big sensored camera, to have more control over my depth of field and have better options in low light than what I currently have. Enter the A7 III, a $2,000 full frame mirrorless camera from Sony that might just be everything you need out of a full frame camera packed into such a tiny body. But first things first, we gotta get it out of the box. And here it is. Man, this is a beautiful, beautiful camera. I've just been so impressed with this camera, but what we're gonna do now is we're gonna improve the quality of what you're seeing in 3, 2, 1. And now you're seeing us from the Sony A7 III. I mean, in the time that it took me to set the new camera up, the sun's almost gone. We're being illuminated by like almost nothing. So this is like a true low light test of the brand new Sony A7 III. I've now filmed with this beast for a few hours now. I've had it since yesterday. I've done nothing but play around with the menu systems, set it up the way I like it, and I've been really far into it. So let's talk about my initial impressions and what I think about the A7 III. So this thing is expensive as all get out. $2,000 is not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. However, when you consider Sony's other line of full-frame cameras like the Sony A7R III, the Sony A9, this is more than $1,000 cheaper than the A7R III, and it's way cheaper than the A9. But one of the nice things is Sony packed a lot of what makes those cameras great into the A7 III. So I only really care about shooting family videos and shooting videos for the YouTube channel. So in that vein, let's talk about the specs of the A7 III that I am most interested in. First up, it's got a 24.2 megapixel 35mm full frame CMOS sensor with a back illuminated design. I mean, seriously, look at this thing. Look at that sensor. That sensor's darn near bigger than the camera I'm filming on right now. The sensor's huge, it's awesome. It has a fast hybrid autofocus with 693 phase detection points. That's almost as good as the system that's in the A9. The autofocus system in this is for the price, you cannot get better than this auto. You cannot get better than the A7 III's autofocus system anywhere. It can record in 4K up to 30 frames per second at 100 megabits per second, and it can do 1080p up to 120 frames per second at 100 megabits per second. It does have a touchscreen that's capable of focus pulling. It has 5-axis in-body image stabilization. Now, the stabilization is not nearly as good as the Panasonic G9 that I reviewed a few months ago, but it's okay. It's pretty good. It's not great. It does have the brand new Z-type Sony batteries that should last 125 minutes of continuous recording. And it has dual card slots. You want me to buy a camera? Put dual card slots in it. I love, love, love dual card slots. And another big feature for me, I do live streaming all the time, and you can charge it externally via the USB-C charging port here. Now, there are far more specs and settings and everything about this camera, so I'll leave a link to the full spec sheet in the description below. If you want to see the full specs, check it out there. Many channels, many blogs have talked about this camera ad nauseum, so we're not going to cover everything about it, but I'm going to talk about the 3 things that I don't like and the 3 things that I really like about the Sony A7 III. Let's start off with a negative. First up, number 1, the Sony does not come with a battery charger. Now, for $2,000, I expect a camera to come with a battery charger. The Sony A6300 did not come with a battery charger. Okay, it's like $800 compared to this. I let it slide on that, but this should absolutely have a battery charger with it. Instead, it comes with a micro USB cable, not even a USB-C to use the USB-C charging port. It comes with a crappy micro USB cable, and it takes forever to charge. For the price, I paid $2,200 to get the kit lens with it too. It should have a battery charger. Number 2, and the thing that people complain most about Sony cameras is the screen. If Sony could just get a fully articulating screen that you could see yourself in, it would be amazing. But they don't. It only does like that. that's what you get, which is disappointing, but the autofocus system really kind of makes up for that. But it would be really nice if we had the fully articulating screen. And I know everybody complains about that to Sony, so it must just be a design choice of theirs that they don't want people to have that for reasons. And number 3, like I mentioned earlier, I do live streams all the time, and I use my cameras as my live streaming cameras. I wish this thing had a full HDMI port on it. It has a mini HDMI port, which is all right, it'll do the job, but I prefer full HDMI port to make sure the cord doesn't get yanked out. I feel like there's more strain put on the port on the camera itself when it's got a mini HDMI, so nitpicky, but I do wish it had a full HDMI. Now, none of those are deal breakers. I just want to say that up front. Not a single one of those is a deal breaker for me. So let's talk about the 3 things that I most like about the camera. There's so many things, but I'm going to limit myself to 3. Now, one of the main reasons you go with a Sony camera these days is the autofocus. The autofocus on this thing is incredible. Like I mentioned before, there's nothing at this price range that comes close to this 693 phase detection autofocus points. Now, there's 2 different kinds of autofocus. We've talked about this in previous videos. There's contrast-based and there's phase detection-based. Phase detection-based means there's sensors inside of the camera itself that tell where light is hitting and determines the autofocus. And that means the autofocus, long story short, is amazing. Number 2, APS-C mode. Now, I didn't really think about this too much. I didn't really think this was gonna be a useful function to me, but the APS-C mode is actually really useful. So what you can do is, there's a setting you can use where instead of using the full frame to film, you can crop it into APS-C style. So you can use APS-C style lenses, you can do all that stuff. But what it does is for a full frame lens, like my 20-70 here, when you pop it into crop mode, it gives you more zoom. So it gives you more natural zoom. So it basically gives you double the lenses for the same price, which is awesome. The versatility in that mode makes it so great. A lot of my B-roll filming today was done on the APS-C mode. I'm really impressed by it. I didn't even care about it, but I'm pretty impressed. Number 3, and something that I beat Sony up on a lot, and a lot of people do, is the menu system. The menu system in the A6300, pretty rough to try to get used to, and Sony cameras in general have pretty bad menu systems, but the menu system on the A7III, they've color-coded it, they've simplified it a lot. The reason that it's more complicated is there's many more functions in here. I do think the menu system is a lot easier to get through on this. So, long story short, this camera basically rocks. I mean, I've been using it for 2 days now. It's incredible what you can do with this camera. I'm really excited to do a full-on review of this. We'll do a full-on review later. If you have something you want to see in a full review, leave a comment below and I'll make sure to include that in. Thanks for watching.